Hey, folks, we're doing a live show in the middle of the day on a Monday, post NFL Draft Monday, actually. We're going to talk about the draft and kind of what transpired, especially on day 3 of the draft. We have a special guest with us today to talk about that. Football game plan owner. He does work nationally with CBS Sports. He's a play-by-play guy, friend of the show. Emory Hunt is here with us to talk about that. The big news from the draft, obviously, is that for the first time actually the second time in the last 4 years, there were no black college football players who were drafted, which caused a stir on social media. People trying to find out why that was, especially since the NFL a couple of years ago said it was one of their initiatives to try to get more black college football players opportunities to be drafted. So we're going to get in all that with Emory Hunt. First off, take care of some business. I'm Kendrick. That's Chris. And join us today on a rare appearance on the show is Brandon King. He's our Tennessee State correspondent. So let's get into it. As you know, Emory, of the 259 picks in the draft, this past weekend, none were from a black college, at least directly from a black college. There were a couple of players who previously started their careers at HBCU before transferring elsewhere, and they got drafted. But no players that actually stayed at a black college got drafted. But there were more than almost 24 players who did sign free agent, undrafted free agent contracts or got minicamp invites. So that's good news. But I guess the conversation we want to have with you, Emory, is kind of like why this year in particular, especially since in the back half of the draft was considered a real deep one, that there was a lack of black college football players who were actually drafted.
Honestly, I think it all boils down to the talent. If this was let's say a top end talent, year for the HBCU ranks, we probably would have seen guys drafted. I don't think it has anything to do with them being from an HBCU. The only guy that really surprised me or that wasn't drafted was Willie Drew out of Virginia State. Him going through the Senior Bowl, then going to the Combine. I thought that pretty much gave him a chance to be called on day 3, especially at a position that we've seen teams draft multiple guys at during the draft. Like you'll normally see a team draft 2 corners or 3 corners. Just to see him not go was probably the biggest surprise. But in terms of the overall HBCU ranks, a lot of times, especially now with the transfer portal, guys are just moving up. So collectively at the FCS ranks, so to speak, those guys that probably would have gotten drafted are now FBS players. So I think that's the bigger shift that we've seen. Guys are not staying at the FCS or D2 level, so they're transferring up. Good for them taking that opportunity. But for the draft purposes, I just feel like it's just, teams are really just get surprised and enamored with that and stuck on with that, FBS shine. That's all it is.
Yeah, we talked to a couple of scouts with draft HBCU players, and they were kind of like really excited about the potential of a couple of guys like Willie Drew, like a Sonnyana Anderson, like a Mickey Victor getting drafted, but that obviously didn't happen. And you mentioned the cornerback position, especially on day 3 of the draft. There seemed to be a run on defensive players in the secondary, and he wasn't one who was picked as well as Willie Drew wasn't either. And you mentioned the fact that a lot of teams do kind of value the FBS players a little bit more so than even the FCS players, and then the black college football players at the Division 1 level and Division 2 level as well. Is that kind of something that these kids got to like overcome? Because I know Willie Drew was invited to the Senior Bowl and he was invited to the NFL Combine, but that scene didn't help his draft stock at all. So is there anything else he could have done differently to try to get drafted?
Honestly, nah. I think that's the unfortunate part of it. And again, it's a lot of it. It's a funnel. When you are starting at the Power 5 level, then we see less G5 guys get drafted, FCS guys, D2 guys, so on and so forth. And that's just how it is, because a lot of teams just view the FBS as, or the, let's say, Power 5 of the FBS as, okay, these guys we know can check the boxes athletically right off the bat at the NFL level, and then it's just a notch below every step you go down that college football ladder. So I truly feel like that's essentially what it is. I don't believe any team is going collectively saying, you know what, oh, this kid's from Grambling, Nah, we're not getting guys from HBCUs. Bump that. We're just gonna only take guys from Florida State. I don't think that's happening at the NFL level because again, it's all about acquiring talent. And unfortunately, the NFL is also in the business of paying you less. So if we know that this guy won't go drafted, we won't draft him. We'll just wait and offer him less to have him perform for us. So a lot of it is financials, but it's also just hey, we're the NFL. We can scrape off the top and go about our business that way, and everybody else will just fall in line.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of glad you mentioned it, and I'll get out of the way and let Chris and Brandon ask a question after this one. But I'm glad you mentioned about the NFL in terms of like looking for talent. There's a lot of people who think, well, there's some conspiracy out there, some vendetta against no black college football players. So that's the reason why they don't get drafted. But we've seen in the past, and that's not the case. We saw a Tariq Cohen get drafted in the 4th round. We saw like other players.
First round pick a couple of years ago in Titus Howard.
Titus Howard, 1st round pick. Yeah, Arkansas, Alabama State got drafted in the 1st round. So we've seen some players from HBCUs get drafted in the 1st round, in the 3rd round, in the 4th round, most recently. So why? I know people are asking, like, well, if that's far in between, but is there anything, like I said before, like schools can do or players can do to try to position themselves to get these players drafted?
How about this? How about these schools?
Oh, I hit the wrong button. Had to go differently.
How about these schools at the HBCU Division I level, combine forces and become FBS? How about that? That's probably the best goal for them to help alleviate a lot of that issue. There's teams, and I brought this up on a couple of different shows. There are teams right now at the HBCU level that are really glorified FBS G5 programs. There's no reason why a collective of 10 to 12 HBCUs that are at the FCS level, even a couple of D2s that got money but act like they don't have money, in Tuskegee, Morehouse, those they can easily be an FCS program right now. How about a collection of 12 HBCU programs, join FBS, become a conference, and then go from there? Because once you become FBS, we know at the high school level recruiting, you're opening the door to a different caliber of athlete. And that's not saying that you can't recruit those guys at the HBCU FCS level or the HBCU D2 or NAIA level. Is just a reality. Guys want to go FBS because they feel like that gives them the best chance to win. So if you are FBS, you're going to have a better opportunity or better, allocation of resources to grab guys that could potentially be on that pro track. So if these school presidents and these ADs want to really compete, they have the opportunity. I've said this a lot. The HBCUs and the Ivy League are the two unique brands in athletics because they can operate on their own based off what they bring to the table. Ivy League has a history, the ancient eight, all that stuff like that. HBCUs have so much going for them because they're unique in their own right. Plus, they could make so much money off of things outside of just the actual football part that's unique only to HBCUs. But it requires a lot of people to get on one accord and chase the money and see the money and go get the money. And that way, everything else will fall in place because we know football is the front door or front porch of your university. And if they're going to be big time and big time players in this athletic space, they got to go FBS.
Yeah, I definitely saw that on social media about a collective effort by black colleges to try to position themselves to get these kids drafted. But Chris, Brandon, anything from you guys?
Yeah, Emory. Just real quick, you mentioned I'm very intrigued by that. Excuse me, by that idea about going FBS because we've had this discussion amongst ourselves in the community about which schools can go D1, which schools probably need to move down to D2 or what have you. But my question for you is, do you feel like the kids that are on the fringes of being recruited, FBS or FCS, do you feel like not seeing HBCU players get drafted would dissuade them from attending HBCUs, or will it, kind of inspire them to say, okay, maybe I could be the next one up from these schools, make an impact?
Man, I wish folks thought like that. In terms of, I can go, build my legacy here. I can go be the guy to help turn around this program. But we know that era of mindset is out the window. because you everyone wants to do what's going to put them in the best position to go pro, even though 95% of them won't go pro, even if they went to the Power 5 school. So it's really about, hey, how can we best position ourselves to go to the school that wants me there? And that goes for FBS, it goes for D3. If a school wants you, go to that school, because if you're chasing jerseys and helmets and logos, those schools don't really want you there, right? And so go where you want it. Because all we see now is guys just go someplace. It's gotten to the point where, and I tweeted this out a couple of days ago, how crazy it has gotten, where true freshmen have entered the transfer portal. Like, bro, you just got your schedule for class. Like, you ain't even on campus yet. What you mean you in the portal? So why even have a signing day if everybody's just gonna jump in the portal, right? So I feel like, yeah, I would like to be Pollyanna and think guys could say, you know what, yeah, we're gonna turn this HBCU, like the top 25 prospects in the country right now, high school seniors, like, you know what, let's all just go to a HBCU. That's a great made for TV movie thought, but in this era of transfer portal and doing it for the gram and all that stuff like that, it won't happen at all. And it's unfortunate, because if guys had that mindset of, hey, if we are the talent, let's go collectively and turn the program around, man, that's how you make moves. That's how you shake the table. That's how you really blow up the table. But realistically, I can't see it happening.
Yeah, Brandon.
You mentioned earlier, you were talking about some of the ways that HBCUs could make money off, just in general, kind of not necessarily dealing with things on the field. And I think, and you can maybe speak to this a little bit, merchandising would be one of those ways. I think that's kind of one of the ways I think that there's a real market out there. And I'm not going to be the homer, but I am. But like, if I'm in Nashville and I want to go buy a Terrell Allen jersey, right, and go to the game, where can I go to? I can't go get that. And so, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a TA or just any of some of our standouts in terms of HBCU football. I think having that merchandising arm is an area that they're leaving goo gobs of money on the table. And with you bringing that up earlier, I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that aspect.
Absolutely. And it goes even further than that. Because let's say if I know, okay, we have an Emory Hunt jersey that we want to sell at Tennessee State, right? And he's a star player on our Tennessee State football team. We're going to make sure our licensing is in order with this particular store, the official store of the Tennessee State Tigers, right? Who is also owned by like-minded individuals, could be black owned or whatnot, where, hey, go here to get that official Emory Hunt jersey of Tennessee State, right? Or other businesses that are tied in that we give that license to. Now we're spreading the money around. So now we're not just making money, but everybody around is making money. The community is making money. The community is uplifted, right? Mm-hmm. And the community is now starting to share in the wealth, and we're starting to build out the block, so to speak. So yes, that's one way. TV is another way. Radio is another way. A different show, whether it be web shows, whether it be different things that you can do to create awareness and revenue about your program with other vendors using the Tennessee State. It's just so much that can happen, but that requires people. How they say, there's too many chefs in the kitchen. You know what I'm saying? Like, in order to be a great leader, you got to be a great follower, and it takes for people to get on the same page and leave their ego at the door and be like, how can we move together and make this thing huge? Because if that's the shift that happens, the entire landscape of college football could change. Because again, HBCUs have something that they can play in. Like I've always said this, the Ivy League has that original 13 colonies money, right? So if folks, if they really got serious about football and wanting to compete on the national levels, like if Alabama's sitting there and Harvard is sitting there in your living room talking to your parents, like, man, they gonna choose Harvard 10 times out of 10. Like, who's gonna turn that down, right? If they really start to, because again, they got, you know, colonial money, so they can really just like lean in and shut all this down, right? So if HBCUs did that, and they're, hey, we are FBS, we're playing for the Orange Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, all that stuff like that. You know, you're going to the league from HBCUs, and you come, you know, for the ancillary things, the culture and all that stuff like that. Who's gonna say no? We got the same things here that they have over there at Florida State or Bama. Like, can you imagine the shift? And then we'll say, man, how come only 13 HBCU players went in the first round this year as opposed to the 25 we had last year, right? Like, that's the shift that could happen. So it's just about you know, there's just a bunch of things outside that has to change, and it requires everyone seeing the big picture, keeping their eyes on the prize, and leaving their ego at the door.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that about kind of like the resource aspect of it, because I know like several schools, even Tennessee State, they've been entrenched in a fight for money that was owed to them from grants and things of that nature from decades ago. Florida A&M, also another school. There's several other schools around the country who are involved in a similar effort that could bring their universities millions and sometimes billions of dollars, which could go in to help with infrastructure, which could go and help with scholarships, and could help with like building athletic programs similar fashion to their in-state Division I partners. So yeah, like it's definitely multifaceted here. But Emory, is there anything to be said? And we heard this a lot every time this happens, that either few or no Black college football players get drafted. Well, if they only played against higher competition or didn't play in the Celebration Bowl, they will be drafted. Do scouts like really care about that stuff?
Bro, we just saw a dude from London, England with no football experience get drafted. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it don't matter, right? So like, you know, I mean, this dude went to a workout, you know, because he's a rugby player or whatnot. Like, they didn't go and ask if he played against Bama or whatnot. That's just internet talk to get people riled up, because we know people get riled up easily online. So no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if Grambling was playing Alabama week in, week out. Like, I mean, hell, when Grambling had that nice year where they should have beaten Arizona, and the quarterback, I forgot his name, that transferred in from Ole Miss, was outstanding that year. He didn't even get drafted, and they went on to win the Black College National Championship, you know, beating North Carolina Central. Like I said, that was the only loss I feel like that year was against Arizona in a game they had won. They were beating Arizona. They probably should have beaten them too. So even with all of that success he had that year, Devontae Kincaid, even with all that success he had that year, he still didn't get drafted. So, you know, it really doesn't matter. A lot of it is, you know, for the NFL, you know, you're checking boxes: height, weight, speed, athleticism, all of those things, and that's the biggest mark. And if you're able to check those boxes, it doesn't matter if you're playing at, you know, Mississippi Valley or Mississippi State. You got to be able to check those boxes, because that's what plays in the NFL.
Right. And as we've seen and know, like even schools that advance in the FCS playoffs, go to the championship game and actually win it, they don't have a lot of players get drafted either. FCS All-Americans aren't drafted either, despite the fact that they have some really great seasons and really great careers. So it's not just a Black college football thing. It's more so like if you're not Power 5, the chances of you getting drafted are kind of slim. And if you're like at the FCS level or below, like the odds really stack against you, because like as you mentioned before, like these scouts and teams are like checking off boxes, and normally they're gonna go with the kid who represents the Alabamas of the world and the Georgias of the world and Michigans of the world. Michigan had 13 players drafted in this cycle that's coming off a championship that they won. So yeah, like they're gonna gravitate towards those players before they gravitate toward anybody else's football team in terms of like if you're on an FCS level or below. Anything else from you, Chris or Brandon?
Yeah, Emory, you mentioned earlier that this draft that just completed was not really talent heavy. what does the future look like? Is 2025, 2026 going to be one of those years where it's just stacked from top to bottom and we're going to be having this conversation again, or is it too early to tell?
Man, I hope so because you know, I know now we're probably getting back. I think this year we'll get back to seniors being actual seniors and not being a senior on the website and having like 7 years left of eligibility. You know, so I feel like we're getting back to normal. So we should see it play out that way. And I'll start creating my board on, you know, the 25 class to start to study, you know, next week. But it's you know, one, it's about, okay, who's on the roster? Is he actually a senior? Is he going to stay there? And that's a lot of unknowns that we have right now as we sit here on April 29th. It's just, you know, so you hope that guy, like for instance, Morgan State, I call a lot of their games. I know Elijah Williams is going to be on that roster. I know he's going to be guys. He's probably going to end up being in a Shrine Bowl, definitely a HBCU Legacy Bowl. Very good player, very good defensive lineman. You need more guys like that. I know a lot of guys that of the games that I had called that Morgan State played, like there's some talent across the MEAC. I know Norfolk State has some talent as well. But again, question, like, here's an issue too. As you know, I was on the broadcast for the Virginia State Wild game in that opener, right? So, and how that game ended between them and Norfolk State. So as I was talking about all throughout the broadcast how excellent of a game Willie Drew had, I was also bringing up how great of a prospect Andre Pegues was. And I still don't know if I don't know. And I was asking this question during the draft cycle, like, is he done or does he have another year? Because I wanted to include him in my draft guide, but I don't know if he's, you know, eligible, or is he going back to Norfolk State, or is he in the transfer portal, or is he done? If he was done, why wasn't he at the HBCU Legacy Bowl? Because he's a fantastic receiver. So when you have all of that unknown, you don't really know who's on the roster, who's coming back, and who's, you know, who's to look forward to down the line. It's really wild out here, man. So I can't wait for us to get back to normal, so that way we could then project forward, like, okay, yeah, you know, not a lot of HBCU guys got drafted this year, but next year's class has XYZ in it. Well, we don't even know who the XYZ is because we don't even know who's on the team, who's on the roster, the updated websites and all that stuff. And that's just not an HBCU issue. You know, that's across the board. Yeah, some schools have their 2024 spring roster on their website, but, you know, guys still are entering the transfer portal. And I don't even know, they'll say the window is closed and it's open, it's closed. Like, I just feel like guys are always entering the transfer portal. So who knows?
Yeah, so how hard does it make for scouts to like try to, I guess, evaluate these players, or like there's a constant movement or like unknown about like their status or where they're going to play?
Extremely hard, because it's especially on the media side of things, because we can't get out in front of, hey man, keep an eye on these guys, right? And here's a list. Because yeah, we may put out a, you know, a prospect watch list for the upcoming draft, and then you'll see the dude tweet out with that long thing that nobody reads about. Just look for the part that says, okay, I'm entering the transfer portal, right? You just look for that part. You'll see that. And like, dang, man, I thought this dude was, and I have 9 years of eligibility left. Like, so, you know, you really don't have, it's hard for, and if it's hard for us, scouts have better resources, and scouts can lose track of guys. That's why they tend to just, man, we know this dude at Florida State going to be at Florida State. You know, there's a lot of movement, unfortunately, at the small school levels that kind of, they weed their own self out, if you know what I mean.
That's crazy. Chris, you got something?
No, I'm good.
All right. And before I let you go, Emory, thanks a lot for your time. We appreciate it. Davis Richard hasn't been, at least not announced yet, signed with anybody or got a camp invite with anybody. How surprised are you that he wasn't picked up yet? And what do you think his prospects are coming off that injury so he had in the Legacy Bowl?
Yeah, there is twofold. I was surprised that he wasn't sign right away. But again, I understand because he got hurt late and wasn't able to work out 4 teams leading up to this process, which is bizarre. I was shocked that he even went to the HBCU Legacy Bowl and played in the game because he had played in the Hula Bowl and had a really good week there. I like how him and Brian Billick was communicating constantly throughout the week of practice. That was good to see because I felt like, this was all right. Brian Billick is taking a liking to this kid, and that should bode well. I hope scouts are paying attention to every rep he had. Him and Billick was like, going back and forth. Hey, what you see here? What you see there? And so I thought the communication was great all week long, being there. And so I'm shocked, but this is the other part too. And this is where if we want these opportunities to happen for everybody, we got to start, promoting and talking about the benefits of these alternate leagues like the UFL, because they're going to continue to expand, teams. They should already have first of all, there's enough for 32 teams. And people think that's wild, but it's not when you think about the NFL is bringing 90 guys to camp. They're cutting 45. That 45 that just got cut, that's your spring team right there, right? So each NFL team could have their own minor league, right? Minor league team. So if we get behind and show support and constantly talk about the spring league, it creates those opportunities for guys to step right in. So we don't have to see, now he's having an MVP-like season this year in AJ McCarron, but we don't want to see AJ McCarron playing spring ball. He's 30 plus years old. We know what he is already. This would be a spot for a Davis Richard to go in there and show his wares that he could play against pros, and then have the NFL reevaluate. And a lot of these guys, I would just bypass the NFL process. I know we all have dreams of hearing our names called and, hold up the jersey and hugging the commissioner. But at some point, you got to have the realistic view of like, hey, man, I know the odds are stacked against me. I know it's tough for me. I know I want that NFL dream just to even get a sniff of the NFL mini camp or rookie invite. I get it. But if you have the wherewithal and the perspective, like, you know what? If my season is over in November, I'm going to have my agent reach out to these UFL teams, tell them I want to come in and play, because you're going to get at least 3 games or 4 games before the draft, right? So you got a 4-game window to ball out and then have the league either draft you straight from there or sign you after the season is over with. So I would just bypass the NFL draft process, go play ball in the spring, and then let the league pick me from there. But that requires a little bit more perspective, and also requires people to talk about these spring leagues as a viable option. So therefore, these players will not see it as a step back. Don't see it as a step back. See it as an opportunity to play pro ball, get fresh tape against high-level competition, and then let the league reevaluate you from there. So that's how I would play it if I was an HBCU or FCS player. I know the other side of that coin is these leagues also still, have that Power 5 gaze, like, oh, wow, we got, the quarterback from Alabama, the 5th string quarterback from Alabama. Like, I get it, but if they want to survive, they're going to have to start seeing it my way. And that's how we all can collectively elevate this thing, move this thing forward.
Yeah, like the XFL went away, but I know when The Rock started that up, he actually had like a tryout camp at Jackson State prior to them starting up, and like several guys who were part of that tryout camp, they actually like made rosters. And actually, some of them played pretty well. I know recently, R.B. Miller, who played at Jackson State, he recently signed a contract in the CFL. So there's more than one way to get your foot in the door. So if the NFL is not calling their spring leagues, there's Canadian football leagues, players can try out for.
There's
I know
teams over in Europe,
the
the European League of Football, or even the GFL, the German Football League. But the European League of Football is a bigger one that now is that you'll see on TV. The Ryan Fire, Barcelona Dragons, all those teams like that. They're still 17 teams strong. They kick off late May. So there's opportunities, to your point. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sure. Emory, thanks a lot for your time. I really appreciate it. I know you got a draft guide that's on your website. How can people find it and what's in it?
It's the largest draft guide in existence, man. Over 900 individual scouting reports, and everyone that's in there has their own full-page scouting report. So it's not like here's my top 10 in detail and then a list of everybody else. Like that's That's bogus. If you're doing that, you're not really doing work. But this one has over 900 individual scouting reports. It's a full color PDF. You can pick it up at footballgameplan.com/2024 draft guide. And so if you've picked up this digital draft guide since 2020, you will now have over 4,300 individual scouting reports at your disposal. So 9 times out of 10, if you played an all-star game, from the FCS Bowl to the HBCU Legacy Bowl, you're probably going to have a scouting report. More than likely, you're going to have a scouting report in there. It's the best draft guide on the market for sure.
Yeah, everyone hyped up the Beast draft guide, the Pro Football Focus draft guide, Pro Football Weekly's draft guide, but this draft guide has literally every ounce of information you could possibly know about a player, from the higher levels of Division 1 to the lower levels as well.
It is easily digestible, man. Like, here's the part that people don't understand. We all love information, but it's week 7 in the football season. I don't give a damn what your 3-cone was. What can you do? Can you play? Can't you play? What's your strengths? That's all we really care about, right? No one is talking about week 6 in the NFL season. Like, well, you had a 40-inch vertical. Like, no, man, nobody care about that. Like, you want to know what this dude can do and what he can't do. So I give you just the beat. It's all filet, no fat. So all those other guides, no shade. But mine is just essentially what you need and what you truly want. And it's easily digestible, man.
Yeah, well, everybody, pick it up, do a little bit of light reading, if you will, on it, and check it out. Emory, thanks a lot for your time. I really appreciate it, man.
Appreciate y'all guys, man. Appreciate you having me on. And I'm a long-time lurker of the forums too. Y'all do great conversations over there as well. I'm a big fan of the forum game.
Oh, Cameron Shaw's gonna like to hear that. It strokes his ego. All right, man. See you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. That's Emory Hunt. Good stuff from him, man. Like, I'm glad he was able to join the show and kind of educate some of our listeners and viewers just about NFL draft, the process, and also thinking about some alternatives these players can have in addition to having the NFL dreams. Like, there's more than just NFL out there. You can play football and apply a trade. But I'm gonna post the list of players who signed contracts or got post-draft minicamp invites that our colleague Jared Hoffman compiled over the weekend. I hope everybody can see that the type is kind of small, but yeah, like almost more than 24 players were either signed a undrafted free agent deal or got a minicamp invite. So opportunities still for a lot of players, despite the fact that they did not get drafted. Chris, I'm gonna throw it to you for this question I got. What did you make of what Emory said about like how important the transfer portal is in really determining whether or not or how much these players get scouted?
As he said, it literally has just, thrown everything up in the air, because when you take into account that there's been the advent of the portal, and then of course the COVID year. This is the last year for the COVID year coming up, by the way. So if you're a kid that is looking for that 5th or 6th year, good luck, because after this year it's a done deal. It's not going to happen unless it's like extenuating circumstances. But when you take into account the COVID year, when you take into account the portal, it's literally just thrown everything off, because you don't know where a kid is going to be from 1 minute to the next. And Emory's right. I think I saw a kid who literally just got the camp or just got the spring camp and was already, putting, his name into the portal. And it's like, wow, did you even go through a scrimmage? Like, I'm not one of these, people, these old get off my lawn types that's like kids are scared of competition. But I got to say that if you're folding your tent at a school and you haven't even made it to the season yet, that's a bit of a problem. And if you got these kids that are moving around, changing addresses every year, 2 years, it really makes it difficult for scouts to keep track of them. And it definitely hurts HBCUs, because not only are we losing kids, but kids are coming in with mixed scouting reports. So, and if a kid that, went to we'll say Tennessee, and he ends up at South Carolina State or FAMU or Bethune-Cookman or North Carolina Central, they're going to say, oh, wow, he went down a class. There's no point in checking in on him. When the reality is he probably just wanted to leave. And this is the one thing that people forget about the transfer portal and scholarships. Scholarships are a year-to-year thing. They can be renewed or they cannot be renewed. And now, instead of just a kid disappearing off campus, like, oh, his conduct or his or her conduct was detrimental to the team, so we moved on from them. Now they say, oh, now we're not going to renew your scholarship, but you can hit the portal and see what else is out there. And that's what a lot of these kids are doing now. Because, I mean, there are some coaches that literally just don't renew scholarships. I mean, it's really rare. It's happened, but it's not something that you can just, set your watch by, like, oh, this coach is just going to keep, bringing in, cycling in different players. It's just not going to happen. But yeah, the portal really has messed things up, and that COVID year has really done a number. But after this year, like Emory said, I feel like it's going to even out, and hopefully we'll get some more consistency with where these kids are playing, and that'll give scouts a central location to get their eyes on more athletes.
Brandon, what say you?
I kind of touching on what Chris just said with the COVID year and everything, and the portal. It turned college athletics into kind of the wild, wild west. And it gave us a taste of collegiate free agency, which is basically what it was. But you look at, like I said, it's hard not only for a school, like if I'm a coach and I've got some kids in, do you think, man, if I go too hard on them, will they just hop in the portal now? So in some ways, it's been detrimental, not only on that standpoint, but also, like I said, looking at from an HBCU standpoint, and we've heard it in basketball and some of the other coaches talk about it, but you see it in football as well. You get these young men in, and maybe they flew under the radar, for lack of better terms, for some of the big boys out there. You come in, you see they've got game, you develop them, and then all of a sudden, that's when they get the proverbial, hey, big head messages from the big schools. So now, you're losing these schools because you went and did the work of basically refining this diamond out of the rough, and now you have to deal with that. So that's one aspect of it as well. And that, and unfortunately, when you go into recruiting, is that in the back of your mind now? If maybe I've got film on a young man that maybe said other people aren't looking, I'm like, man, he can really go. He would do well in our system. If you get him in here and he balls out, are we now looking over our shoulder from USC or Michigan or whoever now? So when I look at it from that standpoint, I can see the side on where this constant movement, like I said, from a scouting standpoint, you have where you've got this over here from you getting in different places, but also from our perspective, like, man, we're doing the right work on the front end in terms of proper recruiting, but then once you do that, you stand a chance to losing them. So, like Chris said, hopefully after this year, it will, even out, and hopefully balance will be brought back to the force.
Yeah, guys, I wanna respond to this comment from Stan. Stan, thanks for checking in with us. He asked, did Coach Prime bring more harm or good for HBCU draft prospects? It seems as if when Coach Prime left, HBCU draft prospects declined. Okay. It's Chris rolling his eyes already. Okay, so before Deion Sanders joined Jackson State, we were kind of in this similar predicament that we're in now. Maybe not to this extreme where like no players were being drafted, but there wasn't like 6, 7, 8 guys being drafted. Maybe we had like 1 or 2. I think the high, maybe like around 2014-ish was maybe like 4. So the numbers were already low. And I know in 2022 there were 4 players drafted, and we celebrated that. Hey, 4 players got drafted. Then last year, 1 player got drafted, Isaiah Bolden from Jackson State. And this year, obviously, no players getting drafted. So I don't think Deion Sanders hurt or helped that much anything with draft prospects. Maybe a lot more attention was maybe put on black college schools. I know he called out scouts for not showing up to pro days, especially at the one in Jackson State a couple years ago. But I don't think it was his influence at all that kind of created what we saw over the weekend. I mean, as Emory mentioned, like scouts already have their boards made. They already know what players they want to identify, and it really doesn't matter, what coaches say. In the matter is, I mean, like Jerry Rice's son went in the 7th round. He played at USC, and he's the son of a Hall of Fame football player. I'm pretty sure Jerry Rice, if he wanted to, could probably try to influence the team to draft him a little bit earlier. But no, they saw Brendan Rice for the prospect he was, and they thought he was a 7th round pick and not a 1st round pick or a 3rd round pick. So I don't think the name of a coach or anything like that will influence a scout that much. It's the program and how many players that program produces that matters a whole lot more than just like being a name at a school. Chris, you rolled your eyes, so I'm gonna let you answer this one too.
Can we please, for the love of all that is holy, on this day, April 29th, 2024, 1:41 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, stop with the Coach Prime, please. I mean, my God. I mean, the man was at Jackson State for what, 2-3 years, and people feel like he walked on water. He turned water into gin and juice. He fed 5,000 people with 2 loaves of bread and 3 fish. He didn't do anything. Okay, let's be realistic about this. Jackson State was an iconic HBCU program that had Hall of Famers such as Robert Brazile, the late Walter Payton, Jackie Slater, long before Deion Sanders even, picked up a clipboard. Enough. That's number one. Number two, we've been dealing with this, downturn of HBCU athletes being drafted for longer than he was at Jackson State. And he's got his own problems to worry about, because I don't know if you haven't noticed, but Colorado was 4-8 last year, and kids are hopping in the portal out in Boulder. So the grass ain't always greener on the other side. That's all I got. Just please, enough.
Brandon, anything from you?
I look at it like this. I think at most he might have got more attention on the program, but when you look at, by and large, he built a lot of, and you see it in Colorado through the portal. So it's not like he was out there on the recruiting trail getting these guys from the high schools. I know that Travis and Kevin Coleman get a lot of the attention, but can you name any other high school guys that he got outside of those two? So, and besides, building that would require, and it's not just true of Coach Prime, but a coach, you have to be there for a period of time to build a program, to build a system, to have a pipeline to the league. So if you're just there for 2 or 3 years, you don't have time to build that foundation to even get to that point. So I said all that to say, no, I don't think necessarily he did, just because of the time factor. And then he's more active in the portal than at the high schools.
Yeah, like I don't think that the prime effect had anything to do with this at all. It didn't have anything to do with players getting drafted 2 years ago, and it certainly didn't have anything with players not getting drafted over the weekend. So, yeah, that's a door that I wish people would stop trying to open in that regard.
Please.
Yeah, but overall, I'm glad Emory was able to enlighten all of us about just how all this stuff works and the thinking behind it, and kind of like how there is no secret vendetta against Black college schools. They're gonna pick the players they feel like are most talented. Now, maybe to counter that a little bit, a couple of years ago, I did interview Dave Van Nett. He is a writer and a former pro scout. He mentioned to me in the story that he's been in NFL draft rooms. He's actually witnessed this and saw like some really talented players who were not from name brand schools get passed over because, in his words, the front officers who were in those draft rooms did not feel they could sell drafting a kid from a lower level school over one of the Power 5 schools. So I would tend to believe that, considering like how poorly a lot of these teams draft, and you find out that down the road, 2, 3, 4 years down the road after the draft's over, the majority of the guys on the field were drafted in the later rounds or undrafted free agents. I think like ESPN had a stat on their broadcast in day 3 of the draft that said for the 2023 season, 63% of the players who were on active NFL rosters were drafted on day 3. Not day 1 or day 2, but day 3.
Crazy.
Yeah, so that means just because you go to some of these big time schools does not mean number one, you're gonna get drafted, and number two, you're gonna stick on a roster. Like eventually, talent will bear its fruit, and it seems like at least recently, like a lot of talent, the hidden gems, if you will, is found in the later rounds of the draft and even in the free agent market. So, it's like, yeah, kids, don't worry about not being drafted. As long as you got a shot to make a team and make an impact, take advantage of it, I'd say. Yeah, but moving on to another topic, as last week the news broke that Tamika Reed, longtime coach at Jackson State, she decided to take the job at UNC Charlotte, a great place to live, by the way. Shameless plug. Um, after a successful run at Jackson State, where she won multiple SWAC championships, was named Coach of the Year 4 times, made a couple of tournament appearances for the Tigers as well. Most recently, this past season, when they appeared in the tournament and they lost to UConn in a game that was competitive early but not late. But she got her flowers from various coaches around the country, and we knew it was a matter of time before Tamika Reed would move on, and Jackson State, didn't keep her around. So fortunately, they didn't. But it happened. Tamika Reed is going to be formally introduced this afternoon as a coach at UNC Charlotte. So, fellas, I'll start with Brandon on this one this time. What do we think about Tamika Reed moving on from Jackson State to go to UNC Charlotte?
I think it's become an unfortunate reality of HBCU sports. When we do get a very talented, able coach that is obviously winning, we know that these other schools, particularly higher divisions, HWCs, will start sniffing around. And unfortunately, they a lot of times can offer the one thing that gets everyone's attention. And it's, pieces of paper with lots of commas and zeros on. And unfortunately, their financial reach in a lot of instances outpaces ours. It seemed like and granted, I'm not in those rooms. We knew that her contract expired. What was it around? Was it April? What month is this? March? I don't know. My timetable, with the twins coming, my days are scatterbrained. But it was earlier in the spring, and I guess my question I would have done, and it's possible that it could have happened, everything in my power to not let it get to the point of that contract expiring. Whether negotiations happened earlier in the season and they broke down for whatever reason that led us to this point. It's unfortunate we lost another good coach from our ranks. It does open things up for in terms of SWAC, much wider open, I'll say. But she's obviously an awesome coach. I still wish her well, but I wish we could have hung on to her and considering what some of the things that she was accomplishing in our league, or in the SWAC, I should say.
Yeah, Chris, you're pretty tapped into women's basketball. What does Tamika Reed no longer being a Black college women's basketball coach kind of mean, not only for Jackson State, but just for Black college basketball in general?
Well, let me start by saying this. Jackson State was very fortunate to hold on to Tamika Reed as long as they did, because I'll never forget after they scared the bejesus out of LSU in Kim Mulkey's first year. And granted, I hated that Kim Mulkey was saying this. She was like, that woman is such a tremendous coach. They need to pay her and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, why are you in HBCU business? Number one, first of all, lady. But she was right. She was right. Tamika Reed proved herself to be probably the best coach in HBCU women's basketball. No disrespect to Larry Vickers, who has done a tremendous job at Norfolk State. Like I've seen it up close. I mean, Norfolk State's been a butt kicker the last 3 or 4 years. But Tamika Reed did an outstanding job at Jackson State. I'll never forget. Jared Hoffman, who's not on this program with us, but usually is, made a great point. Between 1983 and the time Tamika Reed got there, Jackson State had won the SWAC Women's Championship twice. They won it 4 times during her 6 years on campus. That says a lot. That says an awful lot. And it's disappointing that she's gone, but she's earned this right. I mean, UNC Charlotte, no, it's not Tennessee, who she was thought of to be interviewing with at first. It's not UConn. It's not Ohio State. It's not Iowa. But it's still a high-level Division I job. And a coach of her talent, a coach of her personality, a coach of her culture building, absolutely deserves that shot. I hold no ill will towards Coach Reed, and it is my hope and prayer that one day she comes back if she wants to. Now, as far as Jackson State goes, and black college basketball, as Brandon said, success brings, eyes. You're going to get coaches like, Vickers on the women's side in Norfolk State, or Robert Jones on the men's side in Norfolk State. You're going to have coaches like, I'm surprised not one mid-major or higher-ranking Division I school started sniffing around Dante Jackson and Grambling yet. And I'm not trying to put that in the atmosphere. Don't find me, Ken. Don't find me. I'm trying to make a point here. But I'm surprised nobody has started sniffing around Dante Jackson as of yet. There are some very talented coaches in the HBCU ranks, and these schools are going to be looking around, looking like, okay, well, we've done the retread thing with this D1 guy. He stinks. Or this D1 women's coach, she just doesn't have the juice. Let's go see what these HBCU coaches are talking about. And then more often than not, they succeed. So that's why it was really nice to see Texas Southern extend Johnny Jones, because I feel like Johnny Jones is going to be one of those ones that gets a really serious look in the next year or two, especially if Texas Southern keeps doing what they do, playing possum during the regular season and then being a giant during these SWAC tournaments. So it's disappointing that Coach Reed is gone, but when you're as successful as she is, it's not really a surprise.
Oh yeah, like you could tell, like just based on some of the opponents that Jackson State played against and the post game commentary from Kim Mulkey, an example from Gino Ariema and from others, they really like the way she goes about her business. They like the way how she made their team competitive, how dominant they were inside the SWAC. So it was just a matter of time. But I will say that, I mean, we don't know like her motivations for leaving Jackson State. It could have been money, it could have been not. But
I think he froze on us. So I guess we'll wait till he gets back. Oh, he's back. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, I was going to say it for my internet interrupting me again every week now. I will say that some coaches just want a new challenge, want to change the scenery. I mean, I think Tamika Reed probably accomplished everything that she could possibly accomplish at Jackson State, save for winning a tournament game with the Tigers. But I mean, she's undoubtedly the top women's basketball coach at the HBCU level. Undoubtedly the top SWAC coach. And so like maybe she just wanted a new challenge. Just wanted to see if she could conquer another level. I know the AAC isn't exactly a Power 5 league, but they play competitive ball there too. And Charlotte isn't known exactly for its sports in general, let alone women's college basketball. But maybe she wants to like put a mark on that program like she did Jackson State. So best wishes to her and her staff. But I know, Brandon, over the weekend you crafted a piece where you kind of forecasted some of the coaches who might replace her at Jackson State. Tell us about that and kind of like what your thoughts on about like some of the coaches you think could step into the seat after her departure.
Well, I think when I put together the list, I wanted to, because like I said, so often we just go for some of these retreads, and I look to some of the be it NAIA or other Division II programs that were winning, and maybe some of these coaches are not necessarily getting the shine or whatever that they deserved, and so that was why I went with some of the names here. So let's get into them. I am going to get into some of these names here and kind of give you a little bit about them and why I kind of picked them. So I'm going to start with Nadine Demond at Virginia State. And when you look at the quick turnaround that she's had at Virginia State already, just from year one to year two, to putting them at the top of the CIAA, I think she could potentially be a good fit there. She's got previous SWAC experience. She was at Grambling She won SWAC Coach of the Year, so she'd be familiar with the SWAC landscape, so it wouldn't be too totally foreign with her. And so coming back to that, she would obviously have, recruiting experience there. And then if she were to do that, you've obviously got those pipelines that you've built in Virginia, so she could be a viable option there. And then, I'm looking at, and this gentleman really doesn't get the due that he deserves, and that's Eric Jackson Jr. down at Russ College. He's gone 117 and 56 in his time there, 59 and 29 while it's still known as the GCAC. He's coming off another phenomenal season. They went 28 and 4. He's had several 20-win seasons, and he's really getting it done down at Russ. And I would be interested, to see what he could do with a little more resources, a little more access to certain things. Because if he's doing what he's doing at Russ, I think with more he'd be able to do some really great things. And I'm really surprised that his name has not come up in more jobs, considering the phenomenal job he's done down there at Russ. I had Kevin Herod at Florida Memorial for the same thing, for the same type of success that he's had. You're looking at a guy. He's been there for 2 years. They went 41 and 21 overall, 28 and 16 in the SAC, which is the Sooner Athletic Conference. Getting them, he's made it to the finals of the SAC tournament. So he's already in the process of building that program into a powerhouse within the SAC. And if Jackson State doesn't come calling, it's just a matter of time for some other schools will as well. So, and then the last, but certainly not least, is we talked about him a little earlier, but Larry Vickers at Norfolk State, and his reputation precedes him, considering what he has turned that program into a powerhouse within the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. And I think, again, it's one of those situations. If it's not Jackson State, and like Chris said earlier, some of these other mid-majors, I'm surprised that the Hey Big Head messages hadn't come. And if they are, they're certainly not mentioning them. But I think he would also do a fine job there. His track record in terms of what he's done at Norfolk State speaks for itself. So just looking at those four, if those four, they should be on Jackson State's short list. And I think that if they get any of those four, they'd be doing. You could certainly do a lot worse than any of those fine coaches.
Yeah, that's going to be an attractive job no matter who the candidates are, because walking into a program that's one of the tops at the mid-major level and one of the tops in the SWAC too. So they're going to have a really good foundation with players and with support. I mean, like, I haven't really seen too many players hop in the transfer portal after Tamika Reed made her announcement. So they'll have a roster full of at least kids who are committed to staying around and trying to see it through. But Tamika Reed is definitely a great loss for Jackson State. I wish as an alum like she could have stayed as long as she wanted. But I know like Ashley Robinson, who's done a great job finding these coaches, and I know he's going to find the next great one in Jackson State. I know he didn't want to leave either, and I know he probably tried to do everything possible to keep her around. But yeah, we'll see how it goes, and I know Brandon and everybody else will be following along to see like who they name as the next head coach. There's definitely going to be some name who's going to rise up and take that job. But a few weeks ago, I had a thought that maybe Don Thornton might have jumped from UAP to be a little bit too soon to go to Alabama A&M, just because we didn't know the status of Tamika Reed and whether or not she was going to stay. I know she's happy at Alabama A&M right now because that's what she wants to be, but she played basketball at Giant State. She was an assistant at Giant State. And I know, like, she called that her dream job, and now that job is open. I don't know if Ashley Robinson reached out to Don Thornton or I don't know how that would work if that actually happened, since she just took a job at Alabama A&M. But I would imagine, Don Thornton's thinking like, man, I waited just maybe 2 weeks later, I could probably have my dream job. But we'll see though. We'll see though. Stranger things have happened. And thank you guys for joining us on this special midday show on a Monday. It's kind of very rare we do this. I kind of like these, like the day seems to go by a little bit fast when we do that instead of waiting around the night. But we'll think about doing them again.
We may have to have an editorial discussion offline about that.
Yeah, we probably should. Yeah, like these midday shows or something. That I think be considered a little bit later on down the road. But I'm Kendrick. That's Chris. He's Brandon. Thanks for joining us, Brandon. Thanks for Emory Hunt for joining us as well. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get more videos like this. Follow us on social media, on Twitter X, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on TikTok, where Ken is, I guarantee you, he's going to post a bunch of TikToks later on today from this show. Yeah, but we will catch you guys later on. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.